The idea for today is health is not something you achieve, it's something you practice. This is probably the most important thing about living.
Where'd this idea come from? Like, what made you think about it?
I don't remember. It just popped into my head the other day. Most of the ideas I write down are more reminders to myself, more than like things to preach about, but I think that that's a good... Most of the things that catch our attention or are worth discussing are actually things that we need ourselves. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah, it's something I remind myself of all the time is like we get caught up in the place where we're supposed to be, air quotes. But we never get there. There is no there. There's only, it sounds so cliche, but there's only now. And how we go through the iterations of now is our life, right? Our life is never the goal that we haven't reached yet. It's never the thing that we did before. Those are part of the stories that we tell ourselves, which are extremely important for motivation and how we identify our desires and our ambitions and what's meaningful in life. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just getting your stuff done on a daily basis and doing that over and over again. And it sounds unglamorous, but most people that dig into that, and I can say from personal experience, like the times when I do dig into that, it's actually the most enjoyable time. It makes my life the most enjoyable of just living in, what do I got to do today? Am I getting the things done I got to do today? And if you do that over time, you are living a healthy life. To bring it back to health as a practice. You don't achieve, you don't say, like, people say it, but I'm healthy is not a particularly important statement because that doesn't say anything about what I'm going to be in, 10 days from now. So we practice health. You go through the motions of being healthy. You're not in a static state of health, right?
It's really about doing health, doing actions every day that show that you're working towards being a more healthy person. Setting short-term goals are important, obviously, for motivation or for reaching a better version of yourself. They're important, but it's those daily practices that we do every single day that amount to those short-term goals, which then amount to being healthy in the long term, which should be everyone's goal.
So, okay, how does motivation play into this?
Motivation comes and goes. You have phases in your life where you feel really motivated at times and you can stick to something for a couple weeks or a couple months and then it goes away and other things in your life consume you. And during those times, it's really those habits and those practices that you've established in your life that keep you healthy through those difficult times. Being consistent at the gym, being consistent eating healthy every single day, and that amounts to the long-term health. So motivation comes from that action that you do every single day. As you do action, that's when you get that momentum that can keep you going through that hard time in your life or difficult.
So you're saying You don't wait around for motivation to take you. You start to do something and then motivation will follow.
Definitely. We feel like we should wait around to feel like we should do something. But if you actually do that initial, we can call it like a 5-minute action, where it's like you go out for a walk for 5 minutes and don't come back from that walk and tell me that you don't feel better. You're going to feel better. Right. And you're going to want to do more. You're going to want to be productive around the house. You're going to want to, play with your kids, or, do something else that it gives you momentum to do other healthy actions.
Yeah, I think that's something Huberman talked about, which is like the idea that when it had to do with like flow state, or I guess just focus. And he was talking about how, like, physiologically, when we start doing something, we actually begin with a state of agitation. It's like, I think he said like 5 to 15 minutes, somewhere in there, where you will feel uncomfortable, agitated, you want to be distracted, you want to grab your phone. Like, let's say I'm sitting down and I got to write something up. I'm going to want to grab my phone. I'm going to want to, go on YouTube, whatever. But if you can push past that short window of agitation, that's when you actually enter focus. And that's probably analogous to motivation as a whole, which is, if you just push through the agitation of things that you're supposed to do, I think you're right. I think that the motivation will follow after that. Even if it doesn't matter, because in the words of Alex Hormozy, the work needs doing. So I think embracing, to bring it back to health is a practice. It's like, you were kind of mocking me earlier because I say it's like all virtues, but they really are. It's like, you're not a person you're not a grateful person. You practice gratitude, right? You're not a generous person. You practice generosity. I could have 100 instances of generosity in the last 3 years, but if I don't do anything generous in the next month, I'm no longer a generous person. I was a generous person. Now I'm not, right? So all of these things you have to iterate them. And they're perishable goods, right? They're perishable skills. If you don't keep them up to date, they spoil. Just like your cardio, if you don't keep on top of your exercise regimen, your endurance goes away. And it's the same thing with these more abstract parts of our personalities and the way we go through the world. And I think that health in and of itself carries momentum. And it is like having cardiovascular endurance or muscular endurance, where the more you do it, the better you are at doing it, right? Everything feeds into one another. You eat a healthy snack, you feel less fatigued than you normally do. You feel less fatigued, you're more likely to go to the gym. You go to the gym, you feel energized. You're more likely to eat healthy because now you have more willpower for better decisions. And that creates a feedback loop. And the other way, lack of health is also something that carries momentum. But understanding that, like you're saying, the actions are actually what's important. It's, you do the actions. If you're stuck and you're saying, oh man, I'm not motivated, I'm unhealthy, and I don't like the way that I'm living my life, you don't wait to feel like a healthy person and then start doing healthy things. You do the healthy things and then you start to feel like a healthy person. And that's super important. we kind of live in a world where we went through this phase of self-affirmations and, I am beautiful in the mirror, and it's okay, those might have transient benefits, but at the end of the day, there's nothing that substitutes having undeniable evidence that you are the thing that you want to be. And if you're not that thing yet, imagine who that person would be and do the things that that person would do. It's not hard. It seems like a weird idea, but we can all do it. Like, there's some version of you that's better than you are right now in whatever aspect of your life. And if that's something that you desire, all you have to do is think, what would that person do in this scenario? And do that repeatedly throughout the day. And after a year, you will be that person. And that's at the core of what it means of health being a practice and not something you achieve. Because it is that process of constantly looking to the future, comparing yourself to your own ideals, whatever those be, like take away, what's good for your health, all that stuff. It's just like wherever you're trying to go with your health, and how do I compare to those things, and how do I do the steps on a daily basis to continue to move in that direction? Give me a few things that you think of on a regular basis that keep you being healthy. What are the things that you focus on to make sure that you're moving in that direction?
Yeah, there's things that I do automatically, or that we do automatically now, because we've focused on it so much that it's now just every day. These are things that we do. They're habits now. They're pretty ingrained. And some of those would be, going to bed at a consistent time, waking up around the same time. That's still something I'm working on. And, focusing on daily movement. We go for a morning walk every single day with our dog, and we get sunlight in our eyes. That's something that now it's just, we don't even think about it. It's like something we do. And diet and exercise is always something that I'm thinking about and I'm aware. I've definitely been in different phases where it's easier than other times. But it's always something that I'm focusing on and getting better at, prepping meals, sticking to a workout program, and those small daily actions. If I can't get to the gym, I, instead of getting to the gym, I go for a walk, or I make compromises. If I need to clean the house and I don't have time to do something else, cleaning the house is my activity that day. And so there's always things that you can do.
Productive procrastination.
Yes, it can be. Yeah. It can be, but it all accumulates, right? So
yeah. How do you bounce back from realizing I haven't been actually this could probably be a content like content for an episode on its own, but just give me some quick ideas on how do you respond when you feel, I haven't been actually living the healthy life that I know I should be. I'm slipping a little bit. Like, how do you respond to that? How do you bring yourself back to that path?
I think we all have that feeling when we know we haven't been holding ourselves accountable to what we think is what our standards are for ourselves, for our health, for our productivity, for our family life. And when we feel like we haven't been up to our own standard, the first thing is realizing it, like, okay, what am I doing that's different? What is getting in my way? And is it something that I can control right now? Is it something that I can, change my schedule to make time for what's important? Because ultimately, it's so cliche. It's like we have the same 24 hours in a day, and we all do. We just have to make time for what's important. If health is a priority and it's a standard you uphold for yourself, then that's where you have to go back to your calendar and say, okay, where can I fit in, 30 minutes of movement? Where can I fit in, an hour of meal prep just so I'm prepared for the weekly meals to eat healthier? That's something you have to really just sit down and plan.
How do you deal with the emotions of that? Like, I've definitely had this before where you're kind of getting off track a little bit, and then you realize that your momentum's going in the other way. And it almost feels like, well, that's it. I'm done now. I lost it. I had the thing. I used to be whatever. I used to be, 10 pounds heavy. I mean, I've never been 10 pounds heavier in my life, but I used to be 10 pounds lighter, and I definitely was 10 pounds lighter, but I've missed my goal. I can look back and say, oh man, I was doing so well there. Now I'm not. And like, how do you deal with that? Like, I guess it would be hopelessness of feeling inadequate. And I mean, it's not in a way where it's like, oh, I have low self-esteem and it's delusional. It's like you're actually confronted with evidence that you're not being who you say you want to be, and you can't really get around it. You don't want to get around it either. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? You're in that moment of, I'm missing the mark here.
Like I said, acknowledging it first and understanding you're not where you want to be, and then it's that cognitive dissonance that makes us want to change. Like, we're not doing
right.
What we say and what we think we should be doing. And in order to really cause a change, like a big change in your life, it has to be such an uncomfortable feeling where you're like, I have to do something different. And that's the initial point where sometimes you have to get to that point. And I definitely have several times in my life. And those are the moments where I've made the biggest change. I've tried a new diet and I've stuck to it, or I've changed my exercise routine and I've stuck to it and made a lot of progress. And it's uncomfortable, right? But there's a lot of things that are uncomfortable.
Right. I guess that kind of goes to the idea we talk about sometimes, which is like, we've pathologized human emotion, and we make it seem like, oh, I'm upset at myself, or I'm sad, and therefore that's something wrong with me. And the way you put it is, no, those are signals that you're getting from yourself to create action. And I think that's the important thing to take from that is, listen, you can definitely be too hard on yourself, and I think that's a trap in those scenarios, is to self-pity is intoxicating, and that's something to understand as well. And so you can definitely get trapped in the woe is me, I'm a loser, and go binge eat and make it worse and run down that spiral. But yeah, understanding that we need to receive the signals we get from ourselves and be honest, like you're saying, and acknowledge them and say, this is, my subconscious is telling me that I'm not up to my own standards, not other people's standards. That's a completely separate issue. Like you feel bad because your dad thinks you should be this thing. Like that's not the same issue, right? So what are some of the traps in that moment Because I can think of a few. I want to hear your answer on this. Like when you say, okay, you get all this, usually that period of, oh my God, I'm a loser. If you focus on it and you say, I'm gonna make this better, you get this like almost manic like wave of motivation, right? Where it's like it's so high that after doing it a few times, you know it's going to taper out. So what are the traps when you're in that manic state of, oh my God, I need to run away from this version of myself that I don't like? What are the mistakes that you can make at that moment that will sabotage your success?
Yeah, just thinking that the motivation, that short-term motivation is going to lead you on past. Once it fades, you think that you're going to stick to that new goal that you have for yourself.
Right. That kind of actually leads into like my thought on that, which was, I think sometimes you tend to bite off more than you can chew in those instances. You say, "Oh, I used to be like this, so I'm gonna count calories. I'm going to the gym 6 days a week. I'm gonna go to bed at 7:00 every night." You know, like you start to get crazy in that state, and you think you got to fix everything at once. And exactly what you're saying, you have all this motivation, so you do it for like 2 days, and then the motivation crashes, and you've now set yourself up for an unsustainable you've given yourself an unsustainable plan. So definitely, like in those moments, take bite-sized pieces. And I mean, this is the whole topic, is it's a practice, and it's not a crush all your work 4 days before the assignment and get it done and then, oh, okay, perfect, I got the grade now. It's like just small things over time. And so if you're trying to get back into that process of being healthy, just make it sustainable, right? Like that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, and being humble, right? Like I have to do that with myself too. Like we eat relatively healthy, but I feel like I have to just kind of tone my goals back. Because sometimes as soon as I'm like, oh, I want to eat healthier, I want to be more strict, I want to start counting macros, I want to start meal prepping all this healthy food, and it's like, okay, what is one thing that I can do today that I can improve this outcome, eating healthy? Not jumping in and doing everything all at once, because like you said, you're going to stick to it for 2 days, and then you're going to feel like you can't stick to it, and then you're going to feel defeated. And the more defeated you feel from trying new diets or new exercise routines or anything that you don't stick to, you're way less likely to try again.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Not only did you have that loss, it's more likely that you will have more losses in the future if you keep setting yourself up for these failures, because they compound.
Yeah, so that's why it's really important to be humble with yourself and figure out, okay, where am I? And where do I want to go? And what is a small action that I can do today that's going to get me closer? And you're never going to be at that like end result a week from now, a month from now, maybe even a year or two from now. It's like it's a process, and it's a daily practice, like we're saying, right? And sometimes you need someone to be an accountability or support for you and to guide you through like what are the steps that you have to do every single day. And sometimes that's important initially, right? To get you off the ground. If you've had so many failed attempts at, trying to improve your health, and you need to, having someone to guide you through that process is really important.
Awesome. Wanna go to the gym?
Yeah, I guess we should start our day.
All right.